लहानांपासून ते थोरा मोठ्यांपर्यंत सगळ्यांना खेळ खेळायला खूप आवडतात. त्याचं कारणही तसंच आहे. खेळ खेळल्यामुळे शरीराचा विकास तर होतच, परंतु मनाचा सुद्धा विकास होतो. मनामध्ये एक खिलाडू वृत्ती निर्माण होते. कुठल्याही संकटाला सामोरं जाण्याची जी वृत्ती आहे, ती वृत्ती तयार होते. धाडस निर्माण होतं. अनेक प्रकारचा सर्वांगीण विकास जो आहे, तो या खेळाच्या माध्यमातून होतो. परंतु आजची जर परिस्थिती आपण बघितली तर खेळाचा उपयोग हा केवळ स्पर्धेसाठी होतो आहे. त्याच्यामधनं निखळ आनंद प्राप्तीसाठी खेळताना दिसत नाही. उदाहरणार्थ इंटरनॅशनली आणि नॅशनली सुद्धा वेगवेगळ्या प्रकारचे जे खेळ खेळले जातात, त्याच्यामध्ये फुटबॉल आहे, बॉक्सिंग आहे, त्याच्यामध्ये क्रिकेट आहे. ह्या सर्व खेळांमध्ये खूप मोठ्या प्रमाणावर अर्थकारण असं जोडलेलं आहे. नुसतं अर्थकारण नाही, तर त्या देशाचं असलेला, त्या देशाप्रती असलेलं देशप्रेम, ते सुद्धा त्याच्यामध्ये जोडलं गेलेलं आहे. असं निकोप आनंद प्राप्तीसाठी खेळताना फक्त शाळेतले मुलंच दिसतात. शाळेतल्या मुलांमध्येही सुद्धा तसे कॉम्पिटिशन असतेच, की अचे विद्यार्थी आहे, बचे विद्यार्थी आहे, अमुक टीममधला आहे, तमुक टीममधला आहे आणि मग आमचीच टीम जिंकली पाहिजे, ह्याच्यासाठी होणारं ते युद्धच असं त्याला म्हणावं लागेल. हाच धागा पकडून जॉर्ज ऑरवेल या लेखकाने एक सुंदर असा प्रोज लिहिलेला आहे. तो म्हणजे आहे द स्पोर्टिंग स्पिरिट, आणि तो आपल्या अभ्यासक्रमामध्ये आहे. तर हू इज जॉर्ज ऑरवेल अँड व्हॉट ही इज टॉकिंग अबाउट. तर सर्वात प्रथम आपण ही जॉर्ज ऑरवेलची ओळख करून घेऊया. जॉर्ज ऑरवेल was born in 1903 and died in 1950. Means he has only 47 years of life. He was an English poet, essayist, journalist, and critic. Was born in India, yes, in India, in Motihari, Bihar, and educated in England. Best known for his novel 1984, 1984, which was published in 1949, and his allegorical novelia, that is Animal Farm, which was published in 1945. Orwell became one of the most influential writers of 20th century. His opposition to totalitarianism and his commitment to democratic socialism are clearly evidenced in his work. Many of his writings also contain detail of Oriental life. About the text, what the sporting spirit, what is the theme, and what is the background of this sporting spirit, the prose. In this essay, George Orwell asserts that sport is an unfailing cause of ill will. He supports his argument with evidence from several international sporting events, instances of matches which were racked by controversies and heightened passions of players and spectators prove that unbridled competition often leads to animosity. Orwell's radical views raise some pertinent questions about the world of competitive sport. So he raised a very pertinent questions about the nature of competition in the sports. मनाचा जर विकास करायचा असेल, शरीराचा जर सर्वांगीण विकास करायचा असेल, तर निश्चितपणे आपण खेळ खेळले पाहिजेत. त्याच्यामुळे आपल्याला एक नवीन ऊर्जा अनुभवायला मिळते. साधारणतः खूप वेळेपासून आपण जर एकच एक काम करत राहिलो आणि त्याच्यानंतर थोडासा वेळ आपण खेळण्यामध्ये घालवला, तर आपलं तो सगळा जो आलेला ताण असतो, ती सगळी आलेली जी मरगळ आहे, तो जो आळस आहे, तो आळस झटकन दूर होतो आणि एक नवीन चेतना आपल्याला मिळते, एक नवीन उत्साह आपल्याला मिळतो आणि मग त्या दृष्टीने आपण काम करायला लागतो. आता त्याच धर्तीवर मग ह्या सगळ्या खेळाचा असा जर उपयोग होत असेल, तर या संपूर्ण जगामध्ये आज खेळाला इतक्या मोठ्या प्रमाणावर स्पर्धेचं रूप का देण्यात आलं, काय कारणं ह्याच्या पाठीमागे असतील, असा सगळा सविस्तर विचार हा जॉर्ज ऑरवेल या लेखकाने, कवीने, निबंधकाराने या निबंधाच्या माध्यमातून केलेला आहे. काय म्हणतात ते आपण बघूया. द स्पोर्टिंग स्पिरिट. Now that the brief visit of Dynamo football team has come to an end, It is possible to say publicly what many thinking people were saying privately before the dynamos ever arrived. That is, that sporting spirit is an unfailing cause of ill will, and that if such a visit has these had any effect at all on Anglo-Soviet relations, it could only be to make them slightly worse than before. Even the newspapers have been unable to conceal the fact that at least two of our four matches played lay too much bad feeling. At the Arsenal match, I am told by someone who was there, a British and Russian player came to blows and the crowd booed the referee. The Glasgow match, someone else informs me, was simply a free for all from the start. And then there was the controversy, typical of our nationalistic age, about the composition of the Arsenal team. Was it really an all England team as claimed by the Russians or merely a league team as claimed by the British? And did the Dynamos end their tour abruptly in order to avoid playing an all England team? As usual, everyone answered these questions according to his political predilections. Not quite everyone, however. I noted with interest, as an instance of the vicious passions that football provokes, that the sporting correspondent of the Russophile New Chronicle took the anti Russian line and maintained that Arsenal was not an all England team. No doubt the controversy will continue to echo for years in the footnotes of history books. Meanwhile, the result of the Dynamo's tour, insofar as it has had any result, will have been to create fresh animosity on both sides. And how could it be otherwise? I am always amazed when I hear people saying that sport creates goodwill between the nations and that if only the common peoples of the world could meet one another at football or cricket, they would have no inclination to meet on the battlefield. Even if one did not know from concrete examples that international sporting contests lead to orgies of hatred, one could deduce it from general principles. Nearly all the sports practiced nowadays are competitive. You play to win, and the game has little meaning unless you do your utmost to win. On the village green, where you pick up sides and no feeling of local patriotism is involved, it is possible to play simply for the fun and exercise. But as soon as the question of prestige arises, as soon as you feel that you and some larger unit will be disgraced if you lose, the most savage combative instincts are aroused. Anyone who has played even in a school football match knows these. At the international level, sport is frankly mimic warfare. But the significant thing is not the behavior of the players, but the attitude of the spectators. And behind the spectators of the nations who work themselves into furies over these absurd contests and seriously believe, at any rate for short periods, that running, jumping, and kicking a ball are tastes of national virtues. Even a leisurely game like cricket, demanding grace rather than strength, can cause much ill will, as we saw in the controversy over body line bowling and over the rough tactics of the Australian team that visited England in 1921. Football, a game in which everyone gets hurt and every nation has its own style of play, which seems unfair to foreigners, is far worse. Worst of all is boxing. One of the most horrible sights in the world is a fight between white and colored boxers before a mixed audience. But a boxing audience is always disgusting, and the behavior of the women in particular is such that the army, I believe, does not allow them to attend its contests. At any rate, 2 or 3 years ago, when home guards and regular troops were holding a boxing tournament, I was placed on a guard at the door of the hall with orders to keep the women out. In England, the obsession with sport is bad enough, but even fiercer passions are aroused in in young countries where games playing and nationalism are both recent developments. In countries like India or Burma, it is necessary at football matches to have a strong cordons of police to keep the crowd from invading the field. In Burma, I have seen the supporters of one side break through the police and disable the goalkeeper of the opposing side at a critical moment. The first big football match that was played in Spain about 15 years ago led to an uncontrollable riot. As soon as strong feelings of rivalry are aroused, the notion of playing the game according to the rulers always vanishes. People want to see one side on top and the other side humiliated, and they forget that victory gained through cheating or through the intervention of the crowd is meaningless. Even when the spectators don't intervene physically, they try to influence the game by cheering their own side and rattling opposing players with the boos and insults. Serious sport has nothing to do with fair play. It is bound up with hatred, jealousy, boastfulness, disregard of all rules, and sadistic pleasure in witnessing violence. In other words, it is war minus the shooting. Instead of blah blahing about the clean, healthy rivalry of the football field and great part played by the Olympic Games in bringing the nations together, it is more useful to inquire how and why this modern cult of sport arose. Most of the games we now play are of ancient origin, but sport does not seem to have been taken very seriously between Roman times and the 19th century. Even in English public schools, the game's cult did not start till the latter part of the last century. Dr. Arnold, generally regarded as the founder of the modern public school, looked on games as simply a waste of time. Then, chiefly in England and the United States, games were built up into a heavily financed activity capable of attracting vast crowds and rousing savage passions, and the infection spread from country to country. So, this is about the somewhat financial aspects which are related with the sporting activities. Now it became the competition. No one is going to play for fun and for enjoyment.